Hi, folks, and welcome to another live Wednesday chat. Today, I have the great honor of having back, because she was here with me before, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Adele Raemer, she is back with us, which is, I think, a great reason to stay with us for the next 90 minutes. And today, I have also the pleasure to count with Marco as my co-host. So stay around. We're going to have a real, raw conversation. We're going to try to find out how is the life in Israel next to the Gazan border. Adele was living in Nirim. Nirim, the kibbutz that was attacked by Hamas, 7th of October. She was actually there. She shared that story. But this time, I want to focus more on how was life before and after next to the Gazan border. Also, we're going to highlight that today is the Holocaust Day in Israel, so we need to also bring that to the table. Adele just remember us of this, so we will also cover that. So it will be interesting to see from a first-hand perspective how is life in Israel next to Gaza, because we hear so many stuff on the media, and it's hard to know what is true and what is not. But she is there, so she can tell firsthand how it is. From let's say from a human perspective. So if you are into this sort of topics, stay around. Someone who is not watching, share. They're still on time to listening to this discussion. If you enjoy our conversations, our approach to life as such, please award us with a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, there's a button below that is very helpful for us to listen to the channel. So please press that button, the subscribe button. So I'm very, very looking forward for this chat, and I just want to allow Marco to add a couple of words to the discussion. Hi, Marco.
Hello. Very important to bear in mind that today is the eve of Holocaust remembrance in Israel. And I think this should be a key with which we can use to understand what is going on with our neighbors at the moment. I think it is important to underline that qualitatively, what happened on the 7th of October was even worse in many ways than what happened 80 years ago, in the sense that whereas the Nazis tried to hide what they were doing, the Palestinian terrorists were actually boasting about their actions. They recorded it and they broadcasted it live. So when people think that things couldn't get even worse, we have an example of something that took us to an even greater level of depravity. So on that unhappy note, Vitor, please take it away.
Yeah, I just want to add that I have people watching us from Italy, from Portugal. So Adele, I think that they are very keen to understand also from Ashkelon, so not that far from you. So there are people very keen to understand what is life like in Israel when you live next to Gaza. So let's go back in time. In terms of interactions with Gazans before the October 7, how would you describe these sort of encounters?
When I came to live on my kibbutz Nirim, which is 2 kilometers away from the border with the Gaza Strip, it was not a war zone. And in fact, we were able to go back and forth very freely. And when I first came, we used to get into a car or sit on the back of a tractor, a wagon of a tractor, and drive into Gaza and go to the beach, go to the open air markets in Gaza and go shopping. There were Gazans who worked in Israel. And in fact, in 1997, my house was being built on Kibbutz Nirim, and there was a Gazan who was building my kitchen. And I asked him one day, it must be very hard for you. You have to get up early to go through the different roads and security checks. By then, there were security checks by then. It wasn't completely open because there was terrorism. And he said, it's not easy. I had to get up at like 4:30 in the morning in order to get to you by 7:30. But but at least I can earn an honest living for my children, put food on the table. And it was like that for many years until the terror started, and it started being closed off, and we treated the border like the border of any country that has a border with another country, or even another region. Each country's border, sovereign border of a country, it's totally legitimate to have a border crossing and border checks, and you don't just let anybody in. You let in people who you feel are not criminals and not dangerous, and people that you want to let in. For years, I had contacts with people from Gaza who believed in different things than the Hamas believed in. People who they themselves put their lives on the line, endangered themselves, and probably, I guess, their families also, by trying to have normalization, to try and have normal connections with Israelis, normal connections with Jews. And I was in touch with a man named Rami Aman, who he was one of the leaders of the Gaza Youth Committee, a group that tried to educate children in Gaza to understand that the people on my side of the border are not their enemies, and that we can be friends and we can have interactions, that they could have interactions with children their own age. There were times when Rami did something that was called Skype with your enemy. And I remember that one time after one of the escalations, I don't remember what year it was, but Rami asked me if we could do a joint Skype meeting between Israelis and Gazans, or Israelis and Palestinians. He didn't want it to be only Gaza, because he said then they would know that it was him right away. So with people, there were people in Ramallah and other areas, in Arab areas, Palestinian areas in Judea and Samaria. And this was a mere days after rockets were exploding around our houses, bombs were raining down on Gaza, and we spoke to the people on the other side. And we started building bridges, and it was wonderful. In 2019, we did a marathon, a bike marathon, where people on their side of the border and people on our side of the border rode on the bikes on the same day along the border. Our people were closer to the border than theirs were. It was more dangerous for them to be closer to the border, but we wore shirts that said freedom, peace. And at the end of that marathon, in the middle of the marathon, we had a Skype call with the people that were on the bikes on our side and the organizers on their side, and everybody was so excited. And this was the future. This was the hope for the future. And I always told Rami, you guys are my bright light. After that marathon that day, I went back to my house and I wrote a blog post, and I was so excited about it. And I sent it to Manar, one of the people that I was working opposite, who was also with the Gaza Youth Committee. I said, read this carefully, be sure that I'm not saying anything that's going to endanger you or get you in trouble. And she read it, and they read it, and they said, it's wonderful, it's fine. So I posted it, and we had a TV crew from Channel 12 from Israel at the request of the Gaza of Rami, covering it as well. Saturday morning, this was Friday. Saturday morning, I get an urgent call from Manar. Take it down. They're running. They're threatening Rami, and they're chasing him down, and they want to throw him in jail. They say that he's a traitor. So I took my blog post down, which in itself wasn't easy either, because it's Times of Israel and I don't have complete control over it. But I was able to get, even though it was Shabbat, I was able to get in touch with the people of the Times of Israel that took it down. The TV channel was less cooperative, and that program ran. They hunted Rami down, and they jailed him, and they tortured him for months. When he got out of jail, he picked up the phone to me. He called me. He said, Adele, I'm out. And we're not stopping. These were the people that I was in touch with in Gaza. So Rami, a few years ago already, left Gaza. Manar, even before that, left Gaza. I do not have contacts, direct contacts in Gaza anymore. So as I said earlier, we built these bridges between people in Israel and people in Gaza, but those bridges were not made of iron. They were made of rope, and they unraveled very quickly on October 7th, unfortunately.
Adele, may I ask you a question? I understand that you were in contact with these people and you had a very good relationship, but how did that resonate with the fact that Hamas were ultimately elected by the people of Gaza? I mean, how did you cope with that mentally? Nobody doubts that there are decent people in Gaza or anywhere else, but how did you deal with that? I mean, did that not raise some doubts in your mind? Perhaps as one of the Jews, the testimonies of one of the Jews, this is particularly important, as we see in the Holocaust Museum in Israel, in one of the sections where they deal with the Holocaust and they reproduce the home of a German Jewish family. One of the people says, we realized we were living, and I'm going to be a little bit provocative here, we were living in a fool's paradise.
So, as far as I knew, the Hamas were elected, but they weren't free democratic elections, because the Hamas, before the elections, threatened people. They threw their opponents off roofs. They dragged their bodies through the streets of Gaza. So they intimidated people to vote for them. At the same time, there was the Hamas are, and I say this as a teacher, as an educator myself, the Hamas are excellent educators, and they educated an entire generation and more to hate us. And it's been going on for decades. And as I said, I was a teacher. I believe in education, which is why I believed so much in what Rami was doing and the Gaza youth.
Right. And it's beyond doubt that there are decent people there. But I just like to say, and I don't want to belabor the point too much, that it's not just Hamas which educates in this way, it is the PA. You know as well as I that the same education is taking place. We've had the opportunity to see their curriculum, how they teach arithmetic, any subject, and they use some pretty grotesque examples. We know what goes on in their television. So it's not just simply confined to Hamas. It is the PA as well. It is a general ideological framework in which Hamas has nestled for years.
You mean the same PA that is
the PA
President Abbas, who
without a shadow of
the Holocaust? That same PA, yeah, right.
Exactly. We know that it's. Let me. Sorry if I just say one more thing. Essentially speaking, they're cut from the same cloth. Some wear more kefias, others go around in double-breasted suits to fool Western interlocutors.
So I don't remember if either of you came to my kibbutz at any point. Did you? Vitor or Marco? Were
No,
you at
I
Not
didn't.
yet,
No,
no.
no. I had a kibbutz experience many years ago. For 2 years, I practically lived on a Hashomer Hatzair kibbutz in the north, a kibbutz called Mesilot. So I am quite familiar with
Yeah,
kibbutzes.
but on my kibbutz, if you had come to visit on my kibbutz and heard from me about life on the border, we would have ended up at our western fence where we overlook Gaza, and you would have heard me saying that I am sure that the vast majority of the people on the other side of that fence just want the same thing that I do: food on their tables, safety for their children, to be able to give them an education. That's what I told all of the groups that came to visit me. And on October 7th, I realized that I got my numbers wrong. And as you said, I had been living to a certain extent in a fool's paradise, because I truly believed this.
And on a human level, I understand it. We want to believe it because we know that there are very decent people out there. I too have I have lovely interactions. I work as a tour guide and I meet some lovely people. And it's hard to reconcile this, I must admit. We have this problem, but we have to, at a certain point, we have to accept that there is a certain reality and sort of adjust our register to a certain extent.
Indeed.
Sorry if I interrupted you.
Oh, that's fine. It's a conversation, right? So you're absolutely right. I'm a very optimistic person in general, and I believe in the good of people. And I want to believe that other people are also basically good. However, after witnessing the horrors of October 7th, I don't think any of us could have imagined the evil that would be oozing out of those monsters who invaded my community and others near me, invaded the Nova, raping, burning, kidnapping, beheading. No one imagined that, although I remember years back already, Sinwar saying in a speech, "We're going to invade Israel and we're going to come to you in your communities and we're going to cut your hearts out."
Indeed, indeed.
And we didn't believe him. So today, I take them at their word.
We have a comment here from Daniel Hoss. He was also let down by a gentleman called Rami. I remember one of them, Adele, but in the end, that same one showed me his true colors. Rami really disappointed me. So he was living in Israel until I think 2023, if I remember well. I think a bit before October 7, but he can correct me if he's still online. So he went through a similar experience as you.
So I'm not going to be Rami's advocate. He can do that himself. But I do believe in Rami. I do believe that he believed in different things, and I do believe that he was trying to lead in a different way. There's just not enough Ramis. He was interviewed on a program not long ago in Berlin, talking about life as a Gazan in exile. It's going to take a long time, and I don't know what else for me to regain my trust in Gazans and my belief in Gazans. But I do believe that Rami's heart is in the right place, and if Rami were able to lead in Gaza, it would be very different.
Adele, we spoke about you just mentioned the atrocities that took place on October the 7th, and I think we need to reaffirm this because there is a phenomenon known as Holocaust denial, and we're witnessing the same phenomenon with regard to the 7th of October. People trying to deny what happened. Increasingly on social media, we hear people, no, bring us the evidence, this, that, and the other. I've heard many interviews in many international forums, many interviews on radio in Ireland, for example, where the guests on the radio station basically are denying what happened on October the 7th. That's something that we really need to deal with. We must equate them with the Holocaust deniers. I think this is perfectly clear.
And look how fast it happened.
And look with what speed it happened. Indeed.
So this is why it is so important to me to be. I've been abroad 7 times since October 7th on different missions. And anybody who reaches out to me, as you did, I come and I speak because there's no other way that I have of fighting this denial, and it is horrific. But I saw it with my own eyes. I lived it. I've lost friends.
Right.
I've lost people. As I always say, I have a book which is not here. It's in Nirim. Like half my life is always, where's that thing I'm looking for? So it's not here, it's there. But I have a notebook that is filled with 4 pages of names of people who I knew personally, not names of people on posters that you see in the street that abroad are torn down in the streets, people that I knew personally.
Yes.
That I know personally, more than I can count.
Indeed.
4 pages of a book of names of people who were kidnapped or murdered or both. My close friend Judy, whose name I put on the back of my dog tag together with her husband's name, the day that we were told that they'd been kidnapped. I had it engraved there in hopes that when they come back, I'd be able to give it to them.
Certainly.
They're not coming back.
They're not, unfortunately. No. There's another thing I'd like to raise, because I think Holocaust denial can exist in a fertile environment. The Holocaust wasn't just about the direct perpetrators. It was about the silent and the bystanders and the spectators and the people and the governments who didn't take a stand, because Nazism wasn't just about the Germans and Adolf Hitler. There was a fertile international environment, and I believe the Holocaust denial takes place, and the denial of the events of the 7th of October take place when we see governments who take, in the best of circumstances, an ambiguous stand to what happened, that try to create a moral symmetry between the two sides. So I think we have to point the finger at the usual suspects, as Claude Rains said in Casablanca. Namely, many European countries and many of our greatest critics have something to answer for. But I don't think we should be afraid of saying this.
Absolutely.
Right. So can you tell us when do you start feeling threatened by living next to Gaza? Because at some point, I think Hamas showed what were there for, with missiles, with bombs. So when did the kibbutz feel that there's something that we should be concerned on the other side of the border? Can you take us to that time of your life?
So you mean on October 7th or before?
Before, yeah.
The first rocket that exploded in my community was 2007, something like that. Hamas started shooting in 2000. And I felt very secure because I thought, they're aiming at cities. They're not going to shoot at a kibbutz because these were very, very inaccurate missiles. At the beginning, they were just a pipe, by the way, an irrigation pipe. Among the irrigation pipes that we left behind when we exited Gaza in 2005, that instead of taking these irrigation pipes and hot houses that our communities left behind after we were ripped out of Gaza in 2005, people were ripped out of their communities screaming and shouting and objecting. They left hot houses behind, and the Palestinians dug up those pipes and turned them into rockets. So those first rockets were very inaccurate. So they would shoot them at big targets. Shooting it at a kibbutz, where most of everything is a field around, isn't very cost effective. So at first I didn't really feel threatened by it, but we started getting more and more rockets, and then we had the incoming rocket alerts. Now, when a rocket is shot off from Gaza, it takes between 0 to 10 seconds from the second you hear that incoming rocket alert, which we didn't have at the beginning. But now from the second you hear the alert till the second you hear the explosion, you've got from 0 to 10 seconds to get to someplace safe before it explodes. So at the beginning, we didn't even have safe rooms. I didn't get a safe room is a special room. It's like the size of a small bedroom with reinforced concrete walls and ceiling, and a special iron sleeve on the window that closes, and a door that slams closed to prevent it from imploding if the house is hit elsewhere. We didn't have that. Our houses were built without that. And in 2008, the end of 2008, when we had the first Gaza-Israel war, we didn't even have any place safe to be. We didn't get our safe rooms until 2011, when the government of Israel understood that any house, any structure within 4 kilometers of the border, and later that was widened to 7 kilometers, had to have a safe room. So the government built a safe room on every structure, on every house in our community. So I have a safe room now, and I trusted my safe room to keep me safe. And as soon as I got my safe room, I asked our head of security at the time, Zevik Etzion, Zichrono Livracha, who was killed in Protective Edge, how do you lock it? And he said, you don't lock it. You're forbidden to lock it, because if you have a medical emergency and you're locked inside that room, the first responders won't be able to come and save you. And nobody dreamt of a scenario anywhere near what happened on October 7th. We thought the worst case scenarios were that a team of 10 terrorists would try and infiltrate one kibbutz, and the army would be on it. Our first responders were trained to hold the fort for 10 minutes, 15 minutes maximum, because that's the time it would take the army to get there. And I was fine with having a door that didn't lock. We're not so fine with that anymore. But I now have a sort of a lock on my door, a contraption that will not enable anyone from the outside to open it. if I close it with that contraption. But we're always prepared for the previous war.
So you took us through the infrastructure. So how the kibbutz and the community was prepared for an attack, and you mentioned that it came up in a form and shape that was beyond everyone's imagination. But in terms of, say, psychological setup or routines, was there any sort of guidance for people to respond to a potential attack, or how was, for instance, with children, how would you tell them, if something happened, this is how you should react and respond?
Regarding the rockets, you mean?
In general, like
So from the minute a kid can walk in our community, they know that they have to run when they hear the red alert, and they know exactly where to run to. And most people do not have weapons in their house. On October 7th, I know there were many people that went outside their safe room and grabbed knives. I didn't. I was with my son, and we didn't even think of it, because what's a knife going to help you against a grenade or an automatic machine gun, But now we have larger first group troops of first responders. We have army nearby. And with the children, it's a process. I have 3 grandchildren who lived on Kibbutz Nirim. Their mother is not going to be coming back. My daughter is not going to be coming back to live on the kibbutz. They'll be coming back with their dad. My daughter's separated, and their dad is going to be coming back when we go home. We're not home yet. We're not supposed to go home. There's the army has different levels of protection that according to which they define the safety, and our community is still considered a closed war zone. And let me tell you something. It's very noisy, because there is an active war still going on, still raging on the other side. And one of the reasons why I haven't given up my Beersheba apartment yet, even though I'm so ready to, was because it was I want to see how bad the noise is, especially at night. During the day, I can deal with it. I don't even jump anymore when there's an explosion. But when that wakes you in the middle of the night, that's very scary. And if I'm going to have many sleepless nights because of that, then it's just not worth paying that price in my health for having sleepless nights. But I'm working on getting back home, and the thing is, we don't know what direction it's going even. If there's not, if there isn't a hostage deal that brings everybody home and the war stops all of a sudden, then the other option is that this war is going to go on deeper and louder for a very long time. And that's not going to be easy, living on Nirim in those circumstances. But I've basically made the decision that I'm moving back home in the coming weeks and giving up this apartment, because Kibbutz Nirim is the only place where I can truly breathe.
And it's home. Ultimately,
because it's home. Because it's home. We have, I'm in a group here, Playback Theater, that's run by the psychological council here in Eshkol, in the region. And yesterday we had a whole issue of discussing house and home and what it means to be unable to go home because your home is too dangerous or too noisy or too threatening, and how there are so many something that's very important to me that people who are listening now understand is that October 7th didn't happen and is done with. We have 59 innocent hostages, live and dead, still in the terror tunnels of Gaza, now 565 days. And we have people like me, like my community, and other communities around the Gaza Strip who cannot go home yet. They cannot go home with their children. 565 days. It's not, I'm taking my suitcase, we're going to go on a vacation, and we have no control over when we're going to be able to go back. We have no control over our lives. My daughter doesn't know where she's going to be living in half a year from now. That does something to a person's psyche when you lose so much control over your life.
Yes, of course. What is the feeling among your fellow members of the kibbutz? What plans have you got with regard to rebuilding the kibbutz and dealing with a reality that's very different from the one which you would have wanted?
So if you come to my kibbutz today, you will see nothing of the burnt houses. 30 houses were destroyed completely. They've all been torn down. We're not leaving any remnants. Everything is being fixed. Everything is being beautiful. My kibbutz took the decision that we have to build bigger and better and safer and stronger and more beautiful than ever before. And I don't only talk the talk, I also walk the walk. I myself have invested money in my house, putting in new windows, putting in electronic blinds. I'm building a beautiful big porch out back, so I will be able to sit on my porch and have guests with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, because that's going to be my victory. Going back home and living well, thriving well in my home, that will be my victory and my revenge. And that's basically how my kibbutz sees it. So we're full speed ahead. The burnt houses were taken down in the middle of the summer. And today, if you look, I should post a clip on my Instagram of what's going on now. There are already the beginnings of houses being built on the same land that was ashes half a year ago.
Yeah. Another consideration, because I believe it's not just the people on the kibbutz who are living and people who are seeking partnerships with people in Gaza who are living in cloud cuckoo land. I think there's a case to be made for the country to a certain extent was living in cloud cuckoo land, because what happened on the 7th of October could not have happened without the assistance of people with whom we ostensibly have a peace treaty. And I think people tend to ignore the fact that we have an Egyptian army in breach of the Camp David agreements and who have indeed facilitated the transfer of weapons and resources to Hamas. Your views on that?
We can't trust anybody but ourselves, which is why we have to have a strong army, which is why we have to build ourselves up in the same way my community came to the decision that we have to have enough people in our first responders team to be able to protect ourselves. We can't rely on anybody else, in the same way that Abrahamic Accords are good, and I bless the day that that happened. But there's a saying in Hebrew, "Kabdeo v'chashdeo." You have to keep
Respect, but be
yeah,
suspect. Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
yeah.
Indeed. But it is a reality that we're going to have to deal with this, because we're going to eliminate the threat in Gaza. We're going to do that. It comes with a price, of course, but we're still in a reality where we have an aggressive army. We have never really had peace. We've had a peace treaty which isn't really worth the paper it's written on. So perhaps that we have to rethink things, that reimbursing our enemies for wars that they have lost is not such a wise decision. Because that's what we essentially did with Camp David. They lost a war, they lost a number of wars, and each time reimbursed them for having waged a war, and a war of aggression. Perhaps there's something wrong here with this formula. Has this thought occurred to you?
Regarding Egypt,
Regarding the land for peace formula, it is morally, intellectually flawed. That an enemy should be rewarded for waging a war, a genocidal war, which is what each of us. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Could you tell that to the other Western countries
I
who
do it
come
all the
and
time.
criticize us?
No. I'm saying no.
I confirm that.
I belabor this point all the time. But obviously the first people who have to internalize this message is ourselves. We need to believe in it before we can tell other people, which
We
I think
do.
yeah.
We do. And the West has to stop looking at us through the prisms of Western glasses, because it doesn't work.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Talking of the West, with your permission, Adele, I'm going to pick a comment here that is for myself and and Marco. So Dave is asking, how do the hosts see a path to develop to fight the visceral hatred for anything Israeli Jewish related in the current poisonous atmosphere in Ireland? Do you want to start, Marco, or
That's
should
a
I?
very good question.
It
I
is, yeah.
think what's happened in Ireland, and I am a native of Ireland, as you will know, it's something that hasn't always existed. Although Ireland hasn't, the official state for many years didn't even have diplomatic relations with the state of Israel. People were generally friendly. We didn't have this hostility in Ireland when I was growing up. The Jews were very well integrated in society. Nobody ever needed to worry about wearing a kippah. Nobody had to hide their religion, their identity. That is a situation which has changed. It has changed because people also have been investing in changes. Now, there are numbers of factors that are involved in this. Israel, of course, during the course of the years, has not been very good at defending itself, in speaking in moral terms about its moral right to live, for the Jewish people to live in their homeland. And people sense this. Okay, very often we had mealy-mouthed responses. We had people saying, but we're willing to give back half of what we've taken. And it's as if we're speaking of a thief who promises to give back half of what he had stolen, instead of people speaking of what is rightfully theirs. Now, that's one part of the equation. Another part of the equation is we have had years of incitement and investment in incitement by the oil-rich Arab countries. Okay, and this has culminated recently with Qatar. But right through the course of the decades, countries from Saudi Arabia to Kuwait to Qatar and so forth have been investing heavily in poisoning the minds of Western students and the general public. And we have to be aware of this, and we have to raise awareness of this in Europe and the West as well, because this is undermining the very fabric of Western society as well. What people don't realize is that Palestinism is something around which all those forces which hate Judeo-Christian civilization are coalescing. And it's very important to create this awareness, to enable this awareness, and tell people quite frankly that Palestinism is a retrovirus which is ultimately weakening the societies in which it is being propagated. And we see this every day in Europe now. We see it, and it's underreported in the mainstream media. We see churches being burnt down. We're seeing priests attacked. We're seeing synagogues vandalized. And it's, of course, underreported. Fortunately, however, we have alternative media nowadays. We have Adele who can convey her message. We have Vitor. We have people in general who have the courage to speak their mind and to help people join the dots. And I think we have to be working on these things, and we must eliminate the fear factor. We must be able and willing to speak unpleasant truths, because now we've reached a stage where people are going to have to swallow a bitter medicine to get things on an even keel again.
But Marco, social media, it's not enough. It's not good enough, because the algorithms show me what I want to hear.
You're perfectly right.
I want to hear me.
You're perfectly right. You're perfectly right. That is a fact. But on the other hand, I see that when we do reach people, things change. And I can speak from personal experience, where people who had a totally skewed view of the conflict have now managed to join the dots, and they've changed their views completely. I think we can also influence the algorithms as well. We mustn't say it can't be done. It can be done. Zionism is about making the impossible possible, as you know better than I do.
Indeed, and it is not a four-letter word, which many people have tried to turn it into.
And I think other way is to travel. Go and visit the places yourself. Don't rely on what you see on the media. For instance, when I travel, I've been to Israel 6, 7 times, and I always post pictures. I don't always. I make comments, but those can be seen just as words and opinions. But if I put photos, there's not much room for manipulation, and it shows that people are coexisting. It shows that there is freedom and democracy. And sometimes, as they say, a picture shows more than 1,000 words. So I encourage people when they travel to show visuals, because visuals don't lie. There's nothing you can do about it. I know that nowadays there is AI, but a good old-fashioned photo can convert plenty of people. So I think we can also rely on the potentials of photograph.
Indeed, they can.
And by the way, Adele is also a talented photographer.
Thank you.
Talking of that, talk to us about your social media group, your Facebook group, Life by the Border, where you try to show what's going on, like real facts, tangible stuff. How is that mission going in the current day and age?
So my Facebook group, Life on the Border with Gaza, was started in 2011, I believe, when we were between escalations, and I was on a Skype call with my cousin in New York, and I said, we keep running back and forth to the safe room because we keep getting rockets. And he said, well, we don't hear anything about that here. So that was my impetus to form Life on the Border with Gaza. And the man who asked you that very good question before, Dave Bender, joined very early on, and he is on another border. And while until this war, I was very intent on preserving the topic of life on the border with Gaza, because I felt that there weren't other groups that were dealing. There were groups that are dealing with Israel all over, but there weren't groups that were dealing just specifically with life on the border with Gaza. So since this war, we've sort of opened it up, life on the borders in Israel. And Dave is a co-moderator, and it's thanks to Dave's impetus that also very early on, we started doing Zoom calls just for updates, just to tell people what's going on once a week, every Sunday. At the time, it was at 7 p.m. in Israel. Now it's moved to 8:30 p.m. in Israel. And we've done almost every week. And that's very much thanks to Dave, because we both understand how important it is that people listen to the voices of people who are on the ground, not reporters, not people that are coming to take a photo op and then go fly off someplace else, but the people who are living it. So people here are welcome to join Life on the Border.
On that note, Adele, what about the idea of reviving that great institution, which was the volunteer scheme on the kibbutz?
Wow.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful idea to get people to come and live the...
So it's happening, Marco. It is totally happening.
Excellent.
It's October 7th. Our kibbutzim in the north and in the south have been full of volunteers who are coming both from abroad and from within Israel, who are coming to the kibbutzim to help. And I can tell you personally, on my kibbutz, all of our houses were painted, because with all of the artillery, and even if a house wasn't entered or even started to be entered like mine, it's got cracks. So they painted all of our houses, and before it was painted, a team of volunteers came and wrapped my house up, put everything in the middle, and then after it was painted and after I redid the windows, I would go back to my house, and I would get there. Since January 2024, I'm there every week, but I would go back to my house and just grab my head and say, where do I start? I'm doing this. So we have volunteers that are coming to the kibbutz to help us with that also. And one day, about 2.5 months ago, was my day, and 3 civilian volunteers and a whole team of soldiers came, unwrapped everything, put everything back, cleaned. Wasn't perfect. There was still a lot of work to do, but it gave me a leg up, and it gave me someplace to start. So now I'm home, and I'm home a few days every week and cleaning and sorting things out. You know, when you're not home for over 500 days, you have to throw out all these medicines and all sorts of things. Like, there's a lot of work to do. But if it weren't for those volunteers, honestly, I don't know how I would have done it. So volunteers are coming. If any of you are interested in volunteering, there's a Facebook group that's called Volunteering Opportunities in Israel, especially since Protective Edge. And if you want to come to my kibbutz, I can put you in touch with the person who's in charge of the volunteering on my kibbutz. And so the problem with the volunteers of yesteryear is that it was a very expensive proposition for the kibbutzim. So as long as we were the old type of kibbutz, before privatization, we were able to it was an ideological thing. People would come to be volunteers. We'd bring them, teach them how to milk the cows, and then after a couple
I
of
was
days,
a volunteer. I was a volunteer, Adele, many years ago.
Did you have a commitment to come and stay for a certain amount of time?
Well, I am. Yes. I actually started as an ulpanist, I did my ulpan, and then I continued as a volunteer. But many, of course, the non-Jewish volunteers came purely to be volunteers, and they committed to 1, 2, 3 months. Some stayed even for years. Some ended up even getting married, and but it was a very positive way to get to know the country.
Absolutely.
And
It was a positive way to get to know the country, and it was a positive way for our children, our kibbutz kids, to get to know people from other places, because kibbutzim are such a bubble. We're our own society, especially when the kids were sleeping in children's houses.
Yes.
They were such a bubble, and the volunteers opened up a world for them. And as an English teacher, I used to love having the volunteers come and talk to the kids in English, help them prepare for tests, and it was just so good. It was win-win.
Yes, so there was a very positive interaction, and they returned to be our great ambassadors as well. We produce great ambassadors. So I think it's worth. I think people should explore the possibility of reestablishing it. Maybe it was tweaking the format a little, but I think it could be something very interesting.
Absolutely. I want to say something about, among the questions, the points you said you wanted to touch on was children and community life on Nirim. And I want to point out that there are a lot of parents, there are a lot of families that are tentative about coming back, to bring their children back to the border, to bring their children back to the noises and the fear that we live through. But it's the children, in fact, that are bringing their parents back to the kibbutz. In September, when school started, first of all of our high school kids, not high school, junior high and high, 7 to 12, were able to could have stayed in the school that they went to last year. But all of our kids, but for one, chose to go back to our regional school, which meant they have to be bused back and forth every day. It's an hour in each direction, but they wanted to go home. And in September, we brought the grade school children to the kibbutz to play on the kibbutz, to play on the lawns, and they loved it. And we do activities with families every few weeks on the kibbutz in order to help the kids reacclimate back into the kibbutz, so that their last memories of Nirim isn't fear and war and hiding under the bed from terrorists, but playing in the playground and playing on the soccer field and going to the community store. And we're actively working on that, and it's succeeding, because these kids, Passover now, a few days during the Passover vacation, we had activities for the children on the kibbutz, despite the fact that there is an active war going on just a few kilometers away. Not all the kids came, not all the parents let their kids came, but the kids that did had a blast. Oh, maybe that's the wrong word to use. Had a ball. Had a great time. And these kids are our future. Investing in children, we're investing and raising money in order to build a youth center, a place where the teenagers go when they come home from school, before they go home in the evening to their parents, because this is our future. These kids are the future of our kibbutzim.
Right.
Let me go back to the topic of travel. So you mentioned that you were in a few missions overseas, and there were seven. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, I was too close to the microphone. Apologies. No, just want to go through your missions abroad. So you mentioned that you were in 7 different countries. Would you let us know what countries were those and what did you come across?
Wow. So each time I went with a different body. The first trip was 3 weeks after. It was like we were still in October 2023, and a pair of American and Israeli business people understood the importance of bringing Israelis over to bear witness. So they brought us, we were survivors of the attacks, survivors of the Nova, people who'd had loved ones kidnapped. We were brought over to the States, first of all in New York, and then they brought us to Capitol Hill to talk to different lawmakers and to bear witness. And it made such an impact. John Futterman, for example. I don't know if you're aware of John Futterman. He's a senator or a congressperson, I don't remember which, and we spoke to him and told us, we bore witness, and we gave him the posters, which in New York, they were being torn down. And after he heard our stories, he had his secretary print out all of the posters. At the time, there were 252 posters of kidnapped, and lined his office with it in Congress, and started really raising our voices, as did other Congress people. The second mission that I went on was from the foreign ministry. They brought me on a delegation to the Bundesstaat to talk to lawmakers there. And I have not, on none of my trips but one, did I come across any pushback and any anti-Semitism. In many ways, we were preaching to the choir, but the choir needs preaching to as well. So at the one after the Bundesstaat, I was brought by the International Federation of Christians and Jews, and they brought me to a Christian media conference in Tennessee in order to talk to the media there. And that led on to another trip by the Christian Broadcasting Network, who brought me over as their honored guest to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and to talk to their channels and their college. And they've been very, very generous, and they are helping us rebuild our community hub, in fact, with their generous donations. After that, I was brought over by another team, and it was exactly a year ago now, because it was the Moral Heart Society wanted me, and they brought 7 survivors over to talk to 7 different churches on the eve of Holocaust Remembrance Day, to bear witness and to talk about what we lived through, and to hook it up with the horrors of the Holocaust, which was just so incredible. I went to England on a personal visit, but then I was asked to speak to different communities there. Is that 7 yet?
I think it's 5, if I'm counting well.
5. Okay, there were 2 more.
Not to worry, not to worry.
Not to worry, but it's fine if we can
But it just
wrap up with 5.
the kibbutz movement brought me over to also, and we went coast to coast, raising money for the kibbutz movement, because the kibbutz movement from the very beginning have been helping kibbutzim in the south as well as in the north. Kibbutzim that had to be evacuated, and in the north there were kibbutzim that evacuated because they were under threat, and the government wasn't covering that. So the kibbutz movement came in and helped them. So I went over and bore witness and spoke to the communities that they went to in order to help raise money for them. And then I was on a fundraising tour for my own kibbutz so that we could rebuild bigger and better and stronger than ever before. And we got very generous donations that helped us build, as I said, to rebuild the community hub, the dining room, the members lounge, the community store, to put it someplace that's safe, because until now it's still in an unprotected structure, to build a beautiful new playground for our children so that when they come home, they'll have a joyous place to play, and other wonderful things that we're doing, because we have to use this tragedy. We have to take these lemons and turn them into lemonade. Right. As I said, that's going to be our victory. My kibbutz, which was founded in 1946,
right,
on the Egyptian
one of the points in the desert. One of the points in the desert.
Indeed, one of the points in the desert. The 11 points, and we were attacked the first day of the War of Independence, and there was one wall that was remained standing in the dining room, and that one wall had a sign on it, and that sign said, "Lo hatanki netzeach ki'im ha'adam." It is not the tank that will be victorious; it is the people. So in those days, the tanks were the Egyptian tanks, and the people were us. But I took that sentence and turned it into something that's appropriate for me today, which is why I have it engraved on my necklace here. Indeed. That the tanks, yes, the tanks are us and the airplanes are us. And thank God we have the IDF in a country now that can protect us. But the real people, the real side that will be victorious are the people from communities like mine who go back and rebuild. Indeed. And live and thrive.
Indeed. Adele, you are clearly a very idealistic person. Am I correct in saying that? And I think that's a very positive attribute. I lived for 2 years on a kibbutz between 89 and 91, more or less. And it was certainly a formative experience in my life. And it was certainly a turning point in many ways, because had I not enjoyed the experience, I wouldn't have made Aliyah. Nonetheless, I have to say, during my time there, I did notice a difference between the older Chalutznik generation. Chalutznik are the pioneers, and the younger generation. There was a sort of a sense that things were, in a way, falling apart, unraveling in the kibbutz, that they'd lost their sense of direction. And I think it was a great pity. Of course, it you know, as everything, the things needed improving. What's your feeling on that? Is there some way to sort of recapture some of the idealism and connection to the land of Israel, which I felt at the time among the younger generation was becoming somewhat tenuous, and many of them, in fact, left the country, never to come back?
So, you know, in the kibbutzim, like in the 1950s, when the first member brought a kettle to his house, everybody screamed, "Oh my God, it's the end of kibbutz. Nobody's going to go to the members' lounge. Nobody's going to." When they brought the first radio, "No, what's happening? We're losing the kibbutz." And each time things have, in my time, we brought TVs, but everybody got a TV at the same time. But there was one family that got a color TV from their relatives. And the kibbutz had a meeting and said, it's not fair because everybody else has a black and white TV.
Right.
You have to turn off the color on your TV until everybody can have a color TV. Okay, so that was, I kid you not.
No, I'm fully aware of this. Yeah, there was.
It sounds crazy. And
it went on, and I can attest to that. I can certainly attest to it.
Crazy. But as I see kibbutz, it's sort of like a child. They're so sweet and cute and lovable when they're little, and then they start growing up and changing. But a child that doesn't grow up and mature and change, there's something wrong with them, right?
Indeed.
So in the same way, a society that doesn't grow and change with the times is a society that's going to die. And that's why we did.
I know. I understand. No, there's no issue with privatization in the sense, or striking some kind of balance.
There was a big problem.
No, in the sense conceptually speaking.
But I also want to say that
I'm not a socialist. I'm not a socialist, but
I want to say that especially in light of this war.
Yeah.
That sign that I mentioned on that wall. We were pioneers then, and this war has called upon us to be
exactly. So what I'm trying to get at is a sense of mission, because the people who came had a sense of mission. It's not that something should have a stunted growth and remain an eternal Peter Pan or indeed a dwarf, because I think that's what would have happened. Of course, it should grow and flourish, but there was a sense that the idealism was dissipating. The younger generation, they didn't have the same connection to the land. And I said, and you will know that as well, many of them left never to return. And I feel that's a great loss.
I don't know many, but we have
many is an imprecise, but not a. Let's say I know of many cases, put it that way, and I presume it replicated itself on the kibbutzim. What I'm saying is that if somebody leaves, obviously something has sent that Zionist imperative sort of didn't stay. Something happened somewhere along the line.
I think this war has seen a rebirth of
indeed,
pride in Israel, of Zionism, and I've heard a number of Israelis say that when they were growing up, their parents didn't really speak Zionism because they lived Zionism.
Indeed.
But today people are understanding the importance of talking.
Indeed, we took it, perhaps it was taken for granted. We didn't fathom the importance of it. So sorry, Vitor, can I just say one more thing before you?
Sure. There's just a comment from Dave. I will pick it later.
Yeah. So where do you see, what role do you see for the kibbutz in Israeli society now? Can it reacquire sort of a sense of mission? What about the notion of perhaps, I remember when I was on a kibbutz, it assisted in the absorption of Jews coming back to the land of Israel. Is there a place for this in the kibbutz now?
We never stopped. We have families from the Soviet Union.
Indeed.
We have families from South America. We never stopped. Taken families that are coming in. It's called First House in Israel.
Right.
Shown. We never stopped. We didn't talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
Wasn't on social media. There wasn't social media.
Yeah. No, I remember because when I was on the kibbutz, the huge waves of Russian immigrants were arriving, and indeed the ulpans all of a sudden were full of people speaking Russian. So I remember that. I was wondering, because it seems to me that it would be a very useful institution, in fact, for Olim, for people coming, for Jews returning to the land of Israel. It would help them to make a sort of it would be a sort of a softer landing in many ways.
For the beginning, but kibbutz
in the beginning. No, in the beginning. That's what I'm saying. In the beginning, it would be like a sort of an absorption center.
Yeah, but I mean, it depends on where they're coming from also.
Of course.
Family that are coming from a big metropolis doesn't necessarily want.
No, of course not.
I mean, I was born in the Bronx.
Of course.
And my biggest desire when I was growing up, my biggest dream was to open the door and see green. And
I assume there are many like you. There are many like you who would like to live in a green, pastoral context.
Well, when people make Aliyah, they are given choices, and they're given choices of where it's not like in the old days when they brought all these new immigrants over and threw them into Dimona or onto a kibbutz or whatever.
Into the transit camps, which ended up being long-term, the Mabarot for the people.
Well, yeah, but look at Sderot. It's a booming city today.
Indeed, it is. Yeah.
But people are given choices.
Yeah.
Adele, it seems that they want you back in the States. Someone just says, sadly, hurricane denied us the pleasure of hearing from Adele. Maybe we can rebook. They are asking for your return.
I'm happy to come. Anybody who invites me, I'm there.
Do you have any trip in the pipeline to spread your word?
Sorry, do I have any what?
Any trip, any travel in the pipeline to spread your word?
Not that I know of. No plans.
We'll try to do something on the background, Marco. We'll try to next time we'll try to come up with a surprise for Adele.
Perhaps Adele. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
It was indeed a softer economy landing for me. I was a member of a kibbutz in the south when I made Aliyah. I also loaned soldiers homes on kibbutzim with adopted families.
There you go. Dave Bender bears witness to the great potential which a kibbutz can still have.
We still have lone soldiers on our kibbutzim. Good. Another interesting thing is lone soldiers who are not only new immigrants, but there are lone soldiers who were brought up in ultra-Orthodox families, and they decide to go to the army, or they decide to
indeed
secular, and their families disown them, and they come to kibbutzim.
Right. So there you go.
Kibbutzim, my kibbutz anyway, is still a very ideological, ideology-based kibbutz.
Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? I mean, the kibbutz was set up to reclaim the land of Israel. This is, and to establish facts on the ground. I mean, they were central to the Zionist endeavor in many ways.
And they say that if you turn off all the lights in Israel, except for the lights on the kibbutzim, you will see the outline of the country.
Oh, I see.
That's not by accident, because the kibbutzim were positioned to hold the borders
in strategic places. Yes, certainly.
And which is why it is so urgent that we bring our hostages home, because how can you convince families to come back to a kibbutz to live on the border when they do not know that no matter what happens, the country has our backs?
Absolutely. It's an imperative. We're all agreed on that. Yeah.
It's very important to my kibbutz that we have an official state inquiry into the horrors of October 7th.
That'll have to happen. A very broad, with a very it'll have to be a very in-depth, and it'll take time.
We had very in-depth reports from the IDF. They did their job very well, but it's not good enough for the IDF to investigate themselves. It has to be
certainly. In due course, it's an imperative. Because I think.
But due course isn't enough. It has to be ASAP, because with time, people forget.
Of course. In due course, I mean, it'll have to happen in the proper time. We're in the midst of a war, so we can't do anything that's going to make us any more divisive. We have to put division aside. Division is not acceptable.
An inquiry is not necessarily divisive. An inquiry is finding out the truth and finding out what happened, and everybody needs that.
Absolutely, but there is a sense of timing. Things that can put petrol on the flames now. I think we need to be careful. I'd say let's win the war first. That's our number one priority. We need to win the war, and then very in-depth inquiries. I think there's no getting away from inquiries here. And there can be no sweeping things under the carpet. And there can be no sweeping things under the carpet.
Absolutely, but
because
when
it
you're
goes.
a witness on the stand, your memory changes.
Sometimes you even gain more perspective. But we're in the midst of a war now, and the priority now has to be to win the war. Priority has to be to win the war, and also to conduct a proper. It can't be a kangaroo court. It has to be something that is set up properly. And now I fear is not the right time. But anyway,
okay, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one.
We beg to differ. We beg to differ. We beg to differ.
Daniel is agreeing with you, Adele. It seems. Sorry, Marco, but Daniel is on Adele's side.
Vitor, nobody disagreed with me 50 years ago when I said land for peace was a losing formula. Time will tell.
Oh, there was no social media, 42% and evidence. Sorry. But I believe you, Marco. I know you.
No, it wasn't. No, but it wasn't just me. There were many people who said land for peace is a recipe for disaster. Fomenting Palestinism is only going to bring blood and tears, and we see what has happened. And I think there's no room to doubt that.
So for the last 10 minutes, I just want to try to finish with, as usual, with a positive note, Adele. So I know we have a lot of viewers based in Israel. We also have Israelis living abroad, but I'm sure among the crew, we have individuals who are thinking to visit Israel. They want to see it with their own eyes, but they are hesitant because they see so much negativity on the news. So they are about to pack, but they are still thinking twice. So what would be a word of encouragement for people who would like to make to Israel, but somehow they cannot get on the plane?
I feel safer in Israel than I do any place in the world, despite October 7th, despite rockets that are still coming over every so often. Last night, there was a rocket going towards Haifa. But where isn't there terror in the world? So you can't run away from terror. And I think there's a lot to see in Israel that will inspire people, to come learn about our resilience, about the goodness of the people here. Israel has done so much for the world. Come and see it. Come and experience it. Israelis are said to be prickly and rude, but
which is a little true.
But when you look at it, that all of Israel are sort of like a big family, and
of course. You're very right. I agree with you wholeheartedly on this. People misunderstand Israel. People are very friendly, very warm, very direct, which many people aren't really always prepared for, because but certainly the warmth of the people here and the friendliness, and somebody will always help you out here. You won't die in the street as you will die in a European country.
Absolutely.
People are not indifferent here. They do care.
I can assure everybody, God honest truth, I have never for 1 minute been sorry that I came to live here. Never looked back. I look back at what my friends have and what my family have in the States, and it's wonderful. And there's all of these materialistic things that, beautiful vacations and gorgeous homes, plural, more than one home, although now I can't quite figure out how to deal with two apartments. Wait to get rid of one of them because it's just confusing me. But life here is just, for me, so much more meaningful than it
Absolutely.
ever could have been in the States. That I can't imagine living out my life anyplace else.
I'm in agreement with everything you say. On this, we agree 100%. You see, at the end of the day.
Absolutely, like family, we argue. What family doesn't argue?
No,
you know?
we don't even argue. We know we have differences of opinion, but anyway, this is
even when politicians argue, for the most part, my way of looking at it is, I do believe that everybody has the good of Israel at the forefront of their minds. They just have different ideas of how to achieve that.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that you guys agreed, because I would like to finish with a positive note. So I think when it comes to home, there are no division. Like, you guys appreciate the warmness of the place, and you cannot see yourselves living anywhere else, even though you might have separate views on a couple of issues. But there are other things that speak louder than politics, which I think it's great to acknowledge, especially in these turbulent times. So I want to thank you, Adele, not to be in this podcast, but to return to the podcast. That's a different thing.
Indeed, and let me say, we're expecting you to invite us for a coffee on that balcony which you've restored in your home.
Yeah.
Come, I'll bake you brownies.
Yeah. You mentioned that last time, Adele, that you bake brownies. I'm coming.
I'm waiting. When you're coming, put it in my diary.
Yeah,
He's coming. He's coming in June. He's coming to present his book.
So, Marco, you're going to bring him down to me in June?
Bezrat Hashem.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm coming. I'll be there. No microphone, just my big voice.
Perhaps you can organize because he's coming to present his book. Perhaps you can gather a few good English-speaking people, and we can give a little bit of a presentation.
Yeah.
Let me be a chutzpan.
What's a chutzpah? I don't know that.
What's a chutzpan?
Oh, you don't know the word chutzpah?
No.
Oh,
I think the closest you can get to it in English is someone with effrontery, somebody who's not afraid to speak his mind in any situation.
Someone like you, basically.
No, I'm a little more. I'm not a chutzpan.
You just said you were.
I'm a delicate chutzpan.
Israelis are chutzpanim. The person who, as you're backing into the parking spot, comes and parks instead of you. That's a chutzpan. But
so it seems you are running a party, Adele. Daniel was just announcing, and maybe he's coming.
We're going to hold the inquiry at Adele's place.
Okay.
We'll organize it offline. I look forward to that. It was meant to be at the beginning of June, but now with the event with the Irish organization, it might be around the 16th. But I'll let you know once I have the flights books and all that. And it has to be good. I'm gonna have your brownies, Adele. I have a tour guide, Marco. So what else?
We're all ready.
Yeah.
It's you and the night. You and the night and the music, Vitor. You and the night and the music.
Fine by me. Yeah, fine by me. Look, that was another great conversation.
By then, my big, beautiful porch will be ready. Hopefully, I'll get to buy furniture for it by then, and we will sit on my porch, count the birds flying by, hopefully not hear any explosions, and just have a great job.
Vitor will come and volunteer on your kibbutz.
I can, yeah. I was thinking about that. I mean, I had a surgery on January, but I'm capable to do most things, so it's okay.
You've just
other than Excel spreadsheet, I can do anything.
You've just found a schlepper.
Here I am. Yeah.
Excellent. Sounds like a plan. So thank you so much for inviting me and hosting me for an hour and a half and giving me this opportunity to raise our voices.
Yeah,
Please,
that's what
everybody,
is
keep
for.
our 59 hostages in their hearts and in their minds. And whenever you can, talk to your governments about how important it is to put pressure on Hamas to let them go, and for our government to bring them home, and for our country to bring them home, and to get everybody home, and then we can move on and start healing.
Right. So that was a great chat. Again, I just want to encourage the viewers to press those three buttons below: like, subscribe, and share. Please do this free. That's all I'm asking for now. It's not a big ask. There is no costs involved, but it's a massive support to myself and Marco. So if you can share with people who are not aware of these conversations, that is a massive favor to us. If you enjoy the conversation, press that thumbs up. If there's anything you want to say that we will pick after the podcast, you can still put a comment and we'll pick it later on. And if you haven't subscribed, that's another way to make sure that our stuff is properly promoted. I also want to announce that on Sunday, just before we close, just grabbing my notes here, I'm having a session, philosophical session, on life after death from a existential point of view. So we're going to discuss the afterlife, which I think it's a topic that everyone thought at some point in the course of our lives. So I'll be here with two Israeli writers, with Guy Gazan and Elad Amar. We will start at the same time. So if you're in Israel, that's 9 p.m. If you are in the UK and Ireland or Portugal, it's 7. If you are in Central Europe, that's 8 in the evening. So we'll discuss life after death, and also life before death, because I think there's a lot of people who are zombies, and maybe we can also discuss that. Just some food for thought. Sometimes I think there's no life after death, and there's also no life before death. If I look at some individuals, but anyway, that's another topic for Sunday. Okay. Just one last comment. We were here in Israel last year, volunteering for 2 weeks. We tell everyone to go and don't afraid. It's not the image of a world or a nation they envision. Spot on comment. Well, one thing I plan to do in June is to come up with few videos, photos, and articles trying to combat the way that Israel is portrayed in the media. So I will be a soldier using my words. So, guys, I hope to see you on Sunday, viewers, and Marco and Adele. I hope to see you in June. Marco, I see you more often for my sins, but that's another story. So, all the best, and have a good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.